You know, the thing about hitting rock bottom in America, especially when you're 70-something, isn't the dramatic fall, it's the lingering, the slow, cold realization that you might just be spending the rest of your life managing your decline, all alone, completely invisible to the world. That's where Eleanor Vance was. Ellie, they called her, 72 years old, living in Port Ashwood, Michigan, and if you saw her house, you'd know it was a monument to old pride and impossible bills. Her late husband, George, a Korean War infantryman, had always told her dignity was the last thing you surrender to poverty, but sometimes, man, poverty just gets in there and starts dismantling things piece by piece. The paint on that two-story Victorian, peeling off like old sunburned skin. The shingles were gone in patches, leaving dark, wet wounds on the roof where the rain seeped through, pinging into buckets and pots that gave her quiet evenings a terrible, metronome-like soundtrack of loneliness. Ellie wasn't asking for the world, just maybe $1,500 a month, but her social security check barely hit $1,450, tops. She'd sit at the kitchen table every morning, sharp at 5:30 a.m., reading her worn Bible under the light of a single, bare bulb, sipping instant coffee with that powdered creamer. Real half and half was a luxury her weekly food budget couldn't tolerate. The real internal struggle wasn't the coffee, though, it was the pill caddy. She'd look at the blood pressure meds, the diabetes pills, and she'd have to choose, daily dose, or stretch it to every other day. She was fighting a silent war, rationing her life, and refusing to bother her kids. They were building their own futures out on the West Coast, and Ellie swore she would never be the burden that tipped their scales. Lord, just let me make it through another winter, was her daily, whispered prayer. The house might be falling down, but I am not. She had her battles, though. Her neighborhood was dying, too. 3 houses on the block were boarded up, looking like closed, dead eyes. But Ellie maintained standards. She swept her front steps every single morning, regardless of the weather, and she flew that tattered American flag that George had given her, a constant, silent protest against the slow surrender of her neighbors. The local drug crew, a handful of arrogant kids called the alley rats, used to congregate 3 houses down, but they always gave Ellie a wide, respectful berth. "Morning, Miss Vance," they'd call out, not mocking, but genuinely polite. She knew their mothers had raised them right, even if the streets were trying to teach them wrong. Then came the blizzard, the kind of weather event the news anchors call life-threatening, visibility zero, wind screaming through the cracks, temperatures plummeting past 15 below. She knew something was wrong at 6:47 p.m. when her ancient furnace, which had been wheezing and rattling like a dying robot for a week, let out one final, mechanical sigh and fell utterly silent. Within minutes, the temperature in the kitchen started to drop. Ellie pulled on her 3rd sweater, then a 4th, but she knew the brutal truth: her poor circulation and diabetes meant she wouldn't last the night. She was facing her own quiet, dignified end, right there in her cold kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. It was 8:15 p.m. when the thunderous pounding started, rattling the front door and shaking the whole frame of the house. Through the frosted glass, she could make out 9 silhouettes, massive and terrifying, leather jackets, chains, beards coated in rime ice. They looked like something dredged up from the deepest fear of every urban legend about outlaw bikers. Her heart was absolutely hammering against her ribs, but her mind was surprisingly clear. Every news story, every rumor about biker violence screamed at her, "Keep the deadbolt locked. They'll take everything. You save yourself." Her survival instinct was primal, demanding, but then she thought of George, she thought of all those Sunday sermons about the Good Samaritan, and she thought, what would it truly cost me to let 9 human beings freeze to death when I have a roof over my head? The voice through the door, though muffled by the wind, cut through the noise, deep, gravelly, but surprisingly polite. "Ma'am, I am so sorry to bother you, we've lost our bikes, the roads are impassable. We just need shelter until the morning. We have sleeping bags. We won't be any trouble, I swear." Ellie's hand hovered over the lock, trembling, not just from the cold, but from the impossible, gut-wrenching risk. "Lord, if this is how I go," she whispered, closing her eyes, "let it be helping others." She slid the deadbolt open, and in that click, she bet her entire life on the goodness of 9 strangers. 9 giants filed in, shedding snow and ice, stomping their massive leather boots, and that's when the first crack appeared in Ellie's reality. Instead of the drunken, disorganized chaos she expected, she saw something chillingly organized, almost military. The leader, a weathered man with the steady, quiet eyes of someone who'd seen too much, took off his helmet and looked her straight in the eye. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the calm weight of command. "We won't forget this kindness, I promise you." "Kitchen's the warmest room," Ellie managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll put on some coffee." The bikers moved with startling, coordinated efficiency. No argument, no raised voices. The leader barked a single, quiet command, like slicing through butter: "Sound off." "Injuries?" "Gear check." The responses were sharp, almost too formal: "Frostbite on fingers, Sergeant." "Nothing serious." "All good here." "Ready for orders." "Sergeant." Ellie thought. These men weren't gang members, they were soldiers. They were organized. They arranged their sleeping bags in the living room with surgical precision, refusing her offer of the couch with synchronized, polite refusals. "You keep your comfort, ma'am. We're used to sleeping rough." Without being asked, the leader, who introduced himself as Cole, call him Maverick, split them into duties. 2 men with tactical flashlights vanished into the basement to examine the dead furnace. Another, a heavy-set man they called Doc, quietly began inventorying her meager kitchen supplies and the half-empty pill bottles on the counter. "Ma'am," Doc asked softly, his eyes full of concern, "when did you last consume a nutritionally adequate meal?" Ellie's cheeks burned with a shame she hadn't felt since childhood. "I eat fine, thank you, son." She served instant coffee in her mismatched mugs, apologizing for the lack of real cream, and these leather-clad giants, men she thought would rob or hurt her, they praised it like it was the finest single-origin brew they'd ever tasted. "It's perfect, Miss Eleanor." "You're too kind." Cole extended a thick, gloved hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Ellie. I'm Major Cole. Call me Maverick." 20 minutes later, the furnace rumbled back to life, the sound of warmth and hope filling the silent house. "Igniter was shot," the mechanic reported to Cole. "Jerry-rigged something temporary. She'll hold till the thaw." "How much do I owe you, son?" Ellie asked, feeling the blessed heat flow through the vents, melting the cold dread in her bones. "Nothing, ma'am. Neighbors helping neighbors." They organized a watch schedule, with 1 man standing guard by the front window at all times, while Ellie, bolstered by their presence, stretched her canned soup. They, in turn, pulled out military MREs, insisting she take the best components. "Ma'am, you eat." "We eat anything." As the night wore on, her fear transformed into a deep, profound trust. They spoke in quiet military parlance: "The sentinel secure, all quiet. Next watch in 2 hours." When she woke at 3 a.m. for her medication, Cole was sitting alert in the darkness. "All quiet, ma'am. Rest easy. We've got you covered." For the first time since George passed, Ellie felt completely, unequivocally safe in her own home. Dawn broke, gray and cold, signaling the end of the storm. The bikers packed their gear, their cleaning up more thorough than any she'd managed in years. Every man thanked her personally, their gratitude genuine and respectful. Cole approached last, pulling out a thick envelope of cash. "Miss Ellie, this is for the repairs, utilities, whatever you need." Ellie pushed it back firmly, her small hand pressing against his large one. "I didn't help you for money, Major." Cole's eyebrows rose, a look of genuine, almost bewildered confusion. "Ma'am, most people would have taken it, even demanded it." "Well, I'm not most people," Ellie said, her voice quiet but firm, resonating with all the dignity George had taught her. "You're good men, and I believe you. That's enough payment." He studied her face like he was committing her features to permanent memory. He pulled out a business card, hesitated, then slipped it back into his jacket. Instead, he handed her a small metal keychain with a distinctive iron cross and the letters ICR underneath. ICR. Our code. My call sign, Maverick, he said. Anyone bothers you, show them this. Anyone at all. They'll know what it means. I don't expect anything, Major, Ellie insisted. Ma'am, you don't understand, Cole's voice carried a dangerous, unbreakable weight. In our world, debts get paid. Always. You saved 9 lives. That debt is absolute. No debt, Ellie countered, unwavering. Just neighbors helping neighbors. What happened next stopped her heart. Major Cole, this grizzled, leather-clad biker, snapped to attention and delivered a full, perfect military salute. The other 8 men immediately followed suit, their hands rising in sharp, precise motions, saluting Eleanor Vance like she was a 4-star commanding officer. Ma'am, Cole said, his eyes glistening with unshed emotion. You saved 9 lives last night. In our world, that matters more than anything. You did what heroes do. They rode away, engines rumbling in perfect, disciplined formation, leaving Ellie alone on her porch, clutching the keychain and the phone number, watching them disappear down her quiet, broken street. The house was warm. Her floors were clean. But something fundamental had shifted. A vow had been made, and Ellie had a terrible feeling that in their world, that vow was absolutely unbreakable. Over the next 3 weeks, Ellie's reality began to feel less like a quiet struggle and more like a carefully managed operation. It started subtle. The garbage bins, which had never, ever been returned properly by the collection crew, were suddenly placed neatly beside her house, every Tuesday morning. Then, the real changes. 3 houses down, the alley rats, the local drug crew, simply vanished. No sirens, no police raid, no confrontation. They just stopped showing up. Neighbors whispered about big, quiet bikers cruising the street at night, not loud, but taking detailed, silent note of address numbers. Mrs. Perkins, the neighborhood busybody who chaired the non-existent HOA and criticized Ellie's peeling paint every chance she got, started getting unusually large, loud, and entirely fake deliveries every afternoon, things like industrial-sized porta-potties and gravel loads, forcing her to stay inside and manage the chaos. Then things escalated to the surreal. The broken street light, the one the city had ignored for 9 months, the one that made her corner a magnet for trouble, was suddenly working perfectly, casting a bright, warm glow. When Ellie called the city utility department, they had no record of a repair order. Someone, or something, was watching. And acting. Groceries, the good kind, fresh salmon, real English muffins, and that delicious real cream she missed, started appearing on her porch, sometimes twice a week. The note was always the same, handwritten on military-issue memo paper, from grateful friends. The hearth must be warm. Her old CB radio started crackling again, and now she understood the coded transmissions. She heard a voice, gravelly and familiar, the Sentinel secure. Check on the hearth. Perimeter is green. The Sentinel, the protective force. The hearth. That had to be her. She felt a prickle of fear, but it was quickly washed away by a rising tide of protection, a safety she hadn't known in decades. The neighborhood was quiet, safe, and guarded by an invisible hand. Finally, she knew she had to face the truth. She took the phone number, her hand steady now, and dialed. The deep voice that answered was formal, immediate, and utterly shocking. This is Major Marcus Cole, United States Army, retired. Recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Ellie nearly dropped the phone. Major. This is Eleanor Vance. You stayed at my house during the blizzard. The formality melted instantly into a deep, encompassing warmth. Miss Ellie. Ma'am, I've been hoping you'd call. How is the hearth? Furnace holding up? We rerouted some power to that circuit, is it stable? Major Cole, Ellie said, her voice trembling now with recognition, who exactly are you? And why is Mrs. Perkins getting a dozen unwanted deliveries a day? A deep, unapologetic chuckle came through the line. Ma'am, I suppose I owe you a full explanation. I'm Major Marcus Cole, 28 years of service, multiple combat deployments. The men with me that night? Every single one is a decorated combat veteran. A Navy SEAL, a medic who saved dozens of lives in Afghanistan, a Marine Corps Bronze Star recipient. We're the Iron Cross Riders. ICR stands for Iron Cross Riders. It's a therapeutic support system for veterans struggling with PTSD and civilian transition. We ride together, heal together, serve together. You mean, you're all heroes? No, ma'am, Cole's voice was suddenly serious, carrying the heavy conviction of a man who knows sacrifice. You're the hero. You saved 9 broken soldiers who, frankly, had forgotten what we fought for. We saw too much darkness, Miss Ellie. You reminded us what honor looks like in civilian clothes. You gave us back our humanity when we were freezing to death. Then came the devastating truth, the connection that bound them all in a profound, generational debt. Miss Ellie, after that night, I ran a background search on the address, which led me to your late husband. George Vance, Korean War, 1952 to 1953. He served with my mentor, Sergeant First Class Jax Cole, my father, actually. Your George saved my father's life during the Battle of the Bloody Ridge. Fixed his damaged Jeep under a hail of mortar fire, kept him alive long enough to get him to medical aid. Ellie gasped, tears flooding her eyes. George had never spoken of it, good men rarely did. Your husband, Cole continued, his voice thick with emotion, saved the man who raised me, who shaped me into the soldier I became. Without your George, I don't exist, and the ICR doesn't exist. When we saluted you, Miss Ellie, we weren't just thanking you for shelter. We were honoring his widow. We were honoring the military family that sacrificed everything for this country. You are now family. 87 veterans across 3 states now consider you the Sentinel's hearth, our safe harbor, our base of operations. You will never want for anything again, not because we owe you a debt, though we do, but because we take care of our own. That's the vow. Ellie sat there, reeling, the full magnitude of the protection sinking in. She wasn't just under guard, she was adopted by a brotherhood. The drug dealers were gone. The street was clean. And yes, Mrs. Perkins was definitely getting her comeuppance. Major Cole, she finally said, the name feeling right on her tongue, what happens now? Cole's voice shifted back to his old commanding tone, but laced with a new, comforting warmth. Now, Miss Ellie, we execute the full plan. First, your house. My construction company, it's veteran-owned, employs 47 former service members, is going to completely renovate your home. New roof, furnace, electric, plumbing, accessibility features. We're talking about $78,000 of donated material and labor. That's too much, Major, I can't possibly accept. Ma'am, let me finish. Second, we had our VA benefits specialist research your case. You were entitled to widow's benefits you never knew about, $68,000 in retroactive payments and full coverage for all prescriptions, dental, vision. George earned every penny, and the system failed you. We're just collecting what's rightfully yours. No choice, ma'am. It's a direct order. But, why go this far? Because good people like you rarely ask for help, Miss Ellie. That's exactly why you deserve everything we can give. And because George Vance saved my dad. He offered her an official position, den mother for the Iron Cross Riders. A salary of $500 a month, and a title that commanded respect across 3 states. Her renovated house would become their community support center. What would I do, Major? What you're already doing, Miss Ellie. You take care of people who need taking care of. We're buying the abandoned house next door, turning it into transitional housing for homeless veterans. Crime rates are already dropping because of our presence. You showed us what honor looks like in civilian clothes. Now, let us show you what gratitude looks like in action." His voice softened one final time. "Your George would be proud as hell, and frankly, Miss Ellie, we're all proud to call you family." 6 months later, Port Ashwood was unrecognizable. You wouldn't even recognize the street. Ellie Vance's house, now officially christened the Sentinel's Hearth, stood as the absolute crown jewel of the block: fresh white paint, navy blue trim, sparkling new windows, and warm light glowing from every room. The roof was flawless. The furnace hummed silently. The entire block had been fundamentally changed by the vow. Veteran families moved into renovated houses where the alley rats used to operate. The abandoned lot sprouted a community garden. New street lights, installed by the ICR crew, illuminated sidewalks where children could play safely, even after dark. The numbers were staggering: neighborhood crime rates down 67% in 6 months. Property values up 34%. Ellie herself, now Grandma Ellie to everyone, was thriving. Proper nutrition and medical care had restored her energy. She was enrolled in a peer counseling certificate program at the community college, maintaining a near-perfect GPA. She studied at the very kitchen table where she'd once counted pills and rationed food, now surrounded by textbooks and photos of her new, extended veteran family. Her daily routine was a testament to her new life. 6 a.m., coffee with Major Cole on her front porch, discussing community operations. 8 a.m., online classes, where her life experience proved more valuable than any textbook. Afternoons, devoted to her new role as a certified peer counselor. Veterans drove from across the state just to talk with Grandma Ellie, the widow who understood loss, struggle, and finding hope in the darkness. Her basement counseling space was booked weeks in advance. The famous Sunday dinners became legendary. Ellie's expanded kitchen served up to 60 people every week: veterans, their families, neighbors who just needed community, college students studying for finals. Her influence extended far beyond Port Ashwood. 12 other cities had implemented similar Sentinel's Hearth models, pairing veteran groups with isolated military widows, and Ellie consulted on every single one. Cole's construction company had grown to employ 89 veterans, using Ellie's house as the model for community rebuilding projects they called the Phoenix Quarters. The personal relationships were the most profound. Her weekly video calls with her kids evolved into monthly visits, with grandchildren competing to spend summers with Grandma Ellie. Her son, a serviceman deployed overseas, ended his tour early and moved back to Port Ashwood to help coordinate veteran services with the ICR. Ellie's house had become the unofficial emergency shelter for the entire neighborhood. When storms hit, families knew exactly where to go for safety, warmth, and hot coffee. 1 year later, to the day, the weather hit Port Ashwood again. March 15, exactly 1 year after 9 frozen bikers had changed her life forever, another blizzard swept through. Ellie stood in her warm, secure home, smiling. At 8:15 p.m., the exact time the bikers had knocked, her doorbell rang. Through the glass, she saw a young family, shivering, their old car dead in the snow. A young father in his 20s, a woman holding a crying baby. They were desperate, looking for help. Ellie opened the door immediately. Come in," she called out, her voice calm and strong, just as she had a year ago. "You did exactly right coming here." She prepared hot chocolate and sandwiches, learning their story: Miguel, recently discharged, struggling with PTSD and civilian adjustment. Maria, his wife, caring for their premature baby. They were moving to Port Ashwood for a fresh start, knowing absolutely no one. Within the hour, Major Cole arrived with a mechanic. The veteran network, the Iron Cross Riders, mobilized instantly. Miguel had a job with Cole's construction company by morning. Maria had study space and the baby received care through the veteran medical network. By midnight, the family had keys to a small apartment 2 blocks away, fully furnished by veteran volunteers. Miguel stared in amazement at the instant community that had surrounded him. How can we ever repay this kindness? Ellie, Grandma Ellie, smiled and gave the answer she'd learned a year ago, the answer that carried the weight of a lifelong, unbreakable vow: just help the next person who needs it. That's how kindness grows. She looked out her window as Cole's crew cleared the family's driveway. Her CB radio crackled softly with check-ins from the Sentinel patrols across the city. She checked the weather forecast, another storm coming next week. She smiled and restocked her coffee supplies. More people might need help, and Eleanor Vance would be ready. Because here's the eternal truth of this story: you don't need money, power, or special skills to change lives. You just need the courage to open your door when someone needs help. 9 terrified veterans found more than shelter that night. They found their purpose again, and one elderly woman's courage created a family of 87 protectors. Now, tell me this: when your moment comes, and it will come, will you be someone's Eleanor Vance? Did she do the right thing refusing the money, or should she have taken the cash and fixed the house herself? And who do you think is the real hero in this story: the woman who opened the door, or the soldiers who kept the vow? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and share this story if you believe that kindness is, truly, the strongest force in the universe.